Hey everybody, today we are debating how atheism and agnosticism are used and should be used, and we are starting right now. Hey everybody, stoked to have you here. We have two awesome gentlemen. They've got energy, they've got excitement for this discussion. This is one that's been brewing for weeks. Basically, these two gentlemen have disagreements over the title at hand, and it's going to be a great discussion, I think. We appreciate you being here, and if this is your first time, feel free to hit that subscribe button. There's got a lot more debates coming up ahead in the future. Hopefully we'll get to have these gentlemen on again. So, with that, I want to introduce these gentlemen first by just letting you know their links are down in the description. So, if you watch today and you're like, man, I really agree with them, that was off the hook, well, you can check out their material down below. Or even if you're like, oh, that Steve McRae, just the way he defines atheism drives me crazy. You know what? He's going to grow on you. You're going to learn to love him. So you, even if you disagree, just for the sake of being able to hear their arguments straight from them, you can check out their links. And so one last thing I want to do in terms of a quick house cleaning type thing is, before mentioning the upcoming debate, I want to let everybody know, because I almost always forget this. If you have questions during the debate, or I should say civil discourse, feel free to just put an @ModernDayDebate in your chat comment in the live chat, and then just say a question for the Duke or a question for Steve, and then let us know what the question is, because once we know, we can compile it, and then we'll ask those questions at the end of the discussion. So with that, as mentioned, we have an upcoming debate we are thrilled about. Dr. Robert Price, Jesus mythicist and scholar, is going to be here debating Christian apologist Jonathan Sheffield. That is coming up on April 12th. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be epic. So very pumped up about that. And with that, I don't want to waste any more time. We're going to let the debaters introduce themselves. So thanks so much for being here, gentlemen. We appreciate you coming on to Modern Day Debate. And if you guys would like to share a little bit about yourselves, we'd love to hear. So we'll start with Steve.
Well, I'm Steve McRae. I'm one of the co-hosts of the NonSequitur show with Kyle Curtis. I have my own channel, Steve McRae, where we talk about everything from science and philosophy, biology, theology, you name it. We get into some pretty deep discussions. I'm happy to be here today. I want to thank the Duke for actually taking me up on my offer. I've been waiting for about a year to have this discussion with somebody. I was on Twitter just asking, please somebody debate me on this, because I don't debate very often. This is only my third official, maybe fourth if you count the one I had with Stated Clearly. But I really want to thank him for taking me up on that ahead of time. And yes, I got coffee. I found more coffee in my magic green cup.
All set. Oh, I love that it works with the green screen. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
I pull it out of thin air like magic.
That's really cool. So, and we also want to introduce Duke. If you want to share about yourselves, I can tell you, Duke's has been a really pleasant person to engage with over email and Twitter. It's just been really smooth. And so, Duke, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Modern Day Debate. My name is actually, it's Akim Lee. That's my name. And I am a martial artist, martial arts instructor, and filmmaker. And this is my first debate, actually. I've never really debated on atheism and agnosticism, except when it comes to just discussions with my friends and family. So this will be interesting. Please be patient with me as I try to keep my notes in order and my thoughts in order. But yeah, that's basically it.
If I win, you're not going to beat me up, are you?
No, I'm not.
Because I'm sure you can, trust me. James could beat me up. Not that intimidating.
Wait a minute, what does that mean? Does that mean, like, even James could beat me up?
Could beat me up. What does that tell you?
Well, we're stoked for this conversation. So with that, we'll get the ball rolling. Beforehand, the speakers discussed and decided that the Duke or Akim would go first. And so the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Okay, so first I want to address exactly how this debate started. Me and Steve have been talking online for a few months. And most of the interactions have been about the usages of the words atheism, agnosticism, and agnostic atheist and all of that. I don't want to straw man Steve, so I just want to give a quick understanding of what I've gathered from him so far. And that's basically, he does not want to be called or referred to as an atheist. And so I'm just going to read something quick. Oh, and never mind. I'm not going to read that. But I asked him online if he believes a God or any God exists. And his answer was no. So my argument was that makes him an atheist. Now, what kind of an atheist, that's up to him. Whether he knows there's no God, whether he doesn't know there's no God, it doesn't really matter. I use the term to mean an umbrella that encompasses all persons who just do not have a belief in a God. And for some reason, he does not agree with that definition. And the bottom line is, well, if I have one way of defining a word and he has one way of defining a word, how do we justify that? Well, I'm going to go to my book or my school or my dictionary or whatever, and he's going to go to his book and his school and his dictionary or whatever. And that would mean that I have a justifiable reason for believing why I believe atheism means what it means. He has a justifiable reason for believing what atheism means to him. My argument is that his dictionary, his school, his way of figuring out what it means is incorrect. So that's my position. I hope I have Steve's position correct, but that is my argument. His dictionary, his school in philosophy, whatever it means, the way that they define atheism is incorrect. Or it's not modern, or it's failed to be updated. That's it.
My turn, I guess. Okay. I don't think he's straw-manning me. I kind of agree mostly what he said, except for obviously towards the end there. Let me just read out my thing that I wrote on this, because I think it kind of addresses what he just said. This debate's going to be on how the terms atheism and agnosticism are used in philosophy and if they're valid. Basically, I'm going to be showing material facts that are consistent and rigorously used in philosophy of how these terms are generally going to be used when you want to read a peer-reviewed paper, and that when you want to understand the concepts. He's going to be arguing, I think, more definitional things, which I'm not going to get too much into, although I will address his concerns. But I think the argument is really how are these words used in field as opposed to like in small atheist groups, and what are the context of the words, right? Context always takes precedence over the semantic, quote unquote, definitions of a word, because definitions are descriptive, they're not prescriptive. So I'm going to break this down into two parts when we have this discussion. One is going to be the material facts, which I don't think are really that questionable as far as if you go look in the literature, what you're going to find, and then the persuasive argument of which way should we use these terms, the way that I promote or the way that the Duke promotes. I will say ahead of time, there are some assumptions that I'll be making in my presentations and discussions. When I say God, I'm going to include gods and any type of non-natural deity. It's just a shorthand. When we say theism is the belief that God exists, it also includes any kind of gods. We understand that polytheism would be included in that type of nomenclature. So it's just a shorthand way of saying that a theist believes some type of God exists, or at least one God exists. I'm also going to be using the terminology in the way that the established literature uses it, although I understand the way the Duke uses it. Not a problem. We can communicate, even though he uses these terms differently. I will say this, though. I think the goal of this debate is actually to see what these words are actually used by philosophers. And I think that's critical because a lot of atheist channels don't put that information out. They'll recognize that these words are polysemous, meaning that they have more than one meaning, but then they don't really describe what these meanings or usages are external to their own groups. And I think that's a disservice because some atheists have the mindset that these words are only used one way. And by them thinking that, they have some severe misconceptions, because when I use these terms, I'm not using them incorrectly as the Duke maintains, nor are these definitions correct or incorrect, and they're not using them wrong. Wrong is a value judgment. When we were on Twitter, he actually had said that the terminology is wrong. Well, wrong is a value judgment. It's basically getting now into ethics and what is right and what is wrong, what is permissible and impermissible. And I don't think that's how he meant it. But again, when you use the terminology like that, it changes the dialogue. And so I'm going to be arguing more which better use utility-wise, rather than if something's right or wrong, because these words are not right or wrong. There's no objective definition. Dictionaries do not define words. What they do is they tell you the most general usage. But unlike a mathematical definition, which, like, for example, 0 factorial equals 1, that is defined to be the case. So if you see 0 factorial, you know that is equal to 1. That is defined to be that. So you can say by definition. But when you read a dictionary, that's not what it's saying. It's saying that this is just how it's used, but it's not saying it is defined to be this. It's not prescriptively telling you that. That's all I got for my opener, though. So does that address your concerns, Duke, on that?
No, I pretty much understand that from the discussions I've seen on Twitter, that that's what you hold. And I guess what I mean to say is, so you come from a school or a community of philosophers, and that you want it understood that in that realm or in that community, this is what the word means. So when talking, if you're in that field or if you're in that profession, that's the context. And so when you understand the context, the words have a specific meaning.
Correct. Do you agree with that? I mean, do you agree that if I and I have citations, and you've seen them and other people have seen them, of papers that use the terminology the way I do, would you agree that is how it's more often used in the field of philosophy?
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm not in the field of philosophy.
Okay.
And I'm willing to bet that the majority of people on Twitter, where we have met, are not in the field of philosophy. So that's why it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is really colloquially. So if, let's say, for example, a screenwriter understands the word scene to mean two different things. Okay? So a scene to a person that doesn't make a film, and I mean anyone who makes films, whether they're a screenwriter, a director, a producer, whatever, they understand that the average Joe walking down the street is going to identify a scene as one thing, whereas a screenwriter is going to know that a scene is something different. Not that much different, but it's different. However, if that screenwriter is walking down the street and meets a person and says, I love your script, I love this movie, I love the scene where the man jumps off the building into the car and explodes, I love that scene so much, he's not going to say, that's not the proper definition of a scene. He understands the context, and he understands that what he means by scene is slightly different than what he means. He's not incorrect. None of them are incorrect. It's also possible for two screenwriters to meet and say, hey, that scene that you wrote about whatchamacallit with Indiana Jones jumping out the building, dodging the big ball, I love that scene. Both of those screenwriters understand that they don't mean the actual literal scene definition that's met on the page, but the colloquial scene of a general sequence of things happening. So the thing is, my issue is not so much that, oh, well, in the context of philosophy, a scene means this, not a scene, sorry, an atheist means this. It's that when we're on Twitter and you're talking to people, you make it very adamant that you are not an atheist. I can't stand it when people say I'm an atheist, when you know the context at which they are in, that they are trying to address you by. So that's why we've been having this argument, like, why are you coming at us as if everyone is understanding what the school of philosophy teaches?
All right, there's a few things to address here. First, I do want to establish that atheism, as you agree, is a positive belief in philosophy, because a few people haven't recognized that yet. That's something we do not disagree on. Correct? As best understood in philosophy, almost ubiquitously, atheism is the belief that there are no gods, or that theism is false, or the rejection of theism, or the disbelief of theism, which means...
No, I disagree with you.
Well, you said earlier that you agree the way I use my terminology is how it's found in the literature. You said that earlier.
No, that's not what I said. I said I agree that the way you define atheism is through philosophy, through your thing of philosophy. Your school, your definition, I understand how you use the word.
All right, so let me clarify here, because I want to make sure that we're on the same page here.
Sure.
My argument is, one of my many arguments, is very simple, that if you go read the literature, atheism is much more used, again, I'm going to avoid words like definition, much more used to be understood as the positive belief that gods do not exist. And I'll give you my citations.
Okay.
Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Cambridge, Oxford's Learner, Merriam-Webster's Learner, Dr. Oppie, Dr. Flew, Dr. Mosley, Dr. Malik, and numerous others. So, I mean, I could bring the citations if you wish. I don't think that you really want me to right now.
No, that's okay. That's fine. No, that's